Where is the value proposition for what use, for what customer gives us the biggest, return and the fastest return. Try that, accelerate growth there, and then expand.
One, two, three. Coming up on The Modern Acre, we're talking to Apeel Sciences' new CEO, Luiz Beling, talking about the new direction for the business.
The Modern Acre podcast explores the latest in business, investing, technology, and sustainability in agriculture, and we're your hosts, Tyler and Tim Nuss. If you'd like to dig deeper with The Modern Acre, check out our membership community, The Modern Acre Co-op. The Modern Acre podcast is presented by Pinion. The economics of farming are increasingly difficult, and many producers are asking Pinion, the leading food and ag business advisory firm, questions around thin margins and cash flow. Farmers want to know how to calculate the total cost of running the business and determine their farm's true break-even. The answer is twofold. First, calculating beyond the field is critical. Second, ensure you know your true costs. If you're struggling with this, Pinion advisors can perform financial calculations that identify places to cut expenses and ways to optimize your farm business. Learn more at pinionglobal.com or hit the link in our show notes. Tim, before we jump in, just want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor over the past few months, Pinion. It's been great having them as a sponsor. They are really that one-stop shop accounting firm for agribusiness. They know farmers, they know agriculture. We had Kevin on the pod a month or so back talking about succession planning, and there was a ton of insight into that in that conversation. So they work on that side of the house, just general tax preparation. They also do a ton of on the accounting, bookkeeping side of things. We leverage them on our farm. So if you haven't already, give them some love. Hit the link in the show notes. Check out Pinion. We appreciate them being a sponsor on the show.
Ty, we got a fun one this week talking to Apeel's new CEO. As a lot of our listeners know, I worked at Apeel for several years during COVID prior to rejoining the family farm. So it was kind of cool to have a new perspective outside looking in on what the latest is with Apeel.
Tim, I'm surprised that, they were doing a CEO search and they're looking at all the candidates, potential candidates, and they didn't think to knock on your door. A former employee rose the ranks, left the business to join a family farm so wholesome. They didn't come to you to run the CEO seat. I mean, were you kind of bent out of shape about that?
Yeah, Ty, I was a little miffed by that. Like the chip on the shoulder just keeps getting bigger that I was overlooked for the slot. But Luis seems like a great guy and a really impressive background and experience to bring to Apeel.
Yeah, who are we kidding? Way better decision with Luis. No, this is really interesting, guys, because, as many people know, right, like ag tech, especially high valued ag tech businesses are, trying to evolve and pivot in this macroeconomic climate. And Luiz is coming into a situation where he's got to figure out how to justify that valuation and to grow profitably. And so we get into that in this conversation, like what is the plan? How are you going to pivot? Tim, it's kind of interesting to hear how things have changed or evolved since your time there. But we get into all that and how he's thinking through those conversations with investors and the employees and the team and how they really go forward. So I think this is a lesson for anyone interested in ag tech and how some of these larger companies are figuring out how to pivot.
With that, we'll jump in for what's top of mind for Luis.
The thing that keeps me up at night right now is, how am I going to get this great technology that I just inherited here at Apeel to be widely adopted in the industry? And I've been losing many nights. I've been thinking a lot about it, and I would love to share more with you guys. What are some of the ideas I have to get this technology in the marketplace?
Yeah, excited to dig into that. I spent several years at Apeel, kind of pick things back up on where the business is currently and how you're looking about future growth and commercialization of the business. But before we jump into all of that, Luiz, let's get a little bit more about your background and what led you into agriculture.
Yeah, no, I got an interesting background. I was actually born and raised in Brazil, not really in ag. I was raised in large cities, and then got a chance to move to the United States for good back in the late 90s. And then that's really came here for school and then got started my ag career, 25 years ago with a company called Monsanto and had a really good run with them in many different aspects of the industry. It was right at the beginning of the biotech era and creating a new industry with the biotech traits. Got a chance to have a really great career with Monsanto for 20 years, and then obviously a little bit part of Bayer after the acquisition. And then got a chance to actually join, an ag tech company well known now as Farmers Business Network, and spent almost 4 years with them thinking about how my experience from the past would merge with just new ways of bringing technology and products to farmers, and maybe trying to either disrupt or enhance a traditional industry. Spent 4 years trying to help them scale the business, and that was a lot of fun. Learn a lot about e-commerce, learn a lot about farming, learn a lot about needs and how you actually can fulfill those needs by merging technology with a little bit of my traditional ag experience. And then recently just joined Apeel about 4 months ago, and it's been just crazy good learning more about the technology that we have and learning more about how customers are feeling about the technology and maybe ways to really get some of the problems that the supply chain industry in fresh produce, has to deal with, maybe how our technology can help them. So over 25 years of ag experience, pretty much primarily done here in the United States, and really excited about this opportunity.
I think it's so cool. I love the background and just the deep experience in the space. And, now between Farmers Business Network, Apeel, these are some really, notable ag tech companies. And the industry is, I think, facing a lot of challenges, right? And I think just technology in general, right? There are a lot of macroeconomic factors. We talk about it almost every week on this podcast because it is, so top of mind for everyone of, this focus on profitability. Fundraising is much more expensive these days, and so investors are really focused on how do you get to profitability sooner rather than later. And experience with Farmers Business Network, there's been challenges there, there's been great successes there. Now Apeel, right? So you jump into this role to really start this next chapter. So why did you decide to make the move? And talk us through where your head's at 4 months in.
Yeah, though this is great. What actually excited me, there were three main reasons why I joined Apeel, and they were pretty clear. One was just the mission is such a noble mission that once you actually get to know what Apeel is about, the kind of technology they develop and the impact it can have in the world, right? Reducing food waste. Food waste is a big problem. We have to feed a growing population, and you can do that many ways. You can continue to increase productivity with less resources, and or you could also reduce the amount of food that gets thrown away by having making sure that food makes it to consumers' plates, and that's what Apeel is about. So the mission was such a noble mission that caught my attention. The second piece was the technology. I was really intrigued by the technology. It was almost like too good to be true throughout the process. Can this technology really extend shelf life as much as we claim on many fresh produce and for the amount? And then the third one was just a personal development. I've always, in my 25 years in ag, I'm a curious person. I've always, had many roles within the companies I worked for and always learning new things. So the opportunity to come back in the fresh produce and learn, by working with retailers, by working with, suppliers, packing houses and actually learn about their problems and how, Apeel could solve them is and actually help me grow professionally and personally in that journey were the reasons why I'm here, and I couldn't be more excited about it. But those are the three reasons that made me really embark on this journey with Apeel.
Super cool stuff. Would love to dig into kind of the current business model. There's been some updates recently about shelf life extension for export markets and unlocking kind of the overseas markets and using the technology in that way. There's also been some promotion around kind of ease of integrations, where historically it was kind of a longer time frame to get suppliers set up with the Apeel process. So maybe just talk through kind of where the product is currently at today.
Yeah, think about you think about a technology like an edible, plant-based coating that you can put on a lot of fresh produce, fruits and vegetables, and you think it would be so easier if we just treated everything with it, it would be widely adopted. And what we have learned, it's usually a lot more complex and hard to do those things because we know the benefits, but ultimately what we're trying to find out now is what value does it actually bring to the players within the supply chain, right? And is there an economic value in addition to just reducing waste, right? And it's been a journey. We started with a retail-led model, and it was kind of almost like convincing retailers that the technology would work and, consumers would want it and it would allow them to reduce, shrinkage or waste in their stores. And then they would actually, in a way, demand that suppliers treat it. And anything that is being demanded by somebody without a real economic value for those participating creates a tension. And our model was because the formulation, the product itself had a low stability. Actually, it lasted only 2 weeks and then it would expire. We actually had to build a model where we would actually treat, have our own equipment and dryers at time in every packing house to be able to basically treat to order, right? So that way we would apply and the product wouldn't go to, wouldn't expire. And that's very intrusive. If you think about a packing house, we're coming in, having installed equipment. We have to actually change a little bit of their operation. We have our own staff on site trying to help them do that. It's very intrusive. It doesn't really link naturally to their operations. And it was very costly too, right? These equipment, cost a lot of money. They require people, our own people to actually run them. And the last 12 to 18 months, we've been able to actually revolutionize our formulation to the point that now it's a lot more stable, has a much longer shelf life, which allows us to basically just ship finished product to packing houses and more seamlessly integrate that into their operations, which becomes a lot easier to do business with, more user friendly, and most importantly, by removing the people and the equipment costs, it allows for our formulation, our product to actually be cheaper, therefore create a lower barrier to entry for packing houses, suppliers, and even retailers to adopt, right? Because we can actually bring the price down. So that's really the innovation that has happened over probably, Tim, since you left, is now we don't have to do the treatment on site. We can actually now just ship product, finished product, and then just have one person help the packing house, follow the right protocol to make sure it works within, their equipment. There's no need for dryers anymore. So we're starting to see a lot of suppliers very excited about the changes and starting to, want to adopt the technology maybe more widely than in the past.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, what drove the technology improvement?
It's really enhancements in the formulation. What we realized was, and the key thing was every time you're playing with ingredients and how you actually make them, which is part of our proprietary, our IP protection, is our biggest concern was, as we change the formulation, are we going to lose performance, right? Because the performance was never the problem. The product actually does what's supposed to do, which is extend shelf life and give produce the gift of time. That's what I usually refer here. So we had to actually enhance the formulation to the point that the ingredients would be more stable. They wouldn't actually expire, or they would expire only after a longer period of time without really impacting the performance. And that's been the secret sauce of our innovation team, which is second to none in the industry. And they've been able to do that. They've been able to actually stabilize the formulation by changing how we do things and changing even some ingredients in the chains that we use in our products, and without having a significant or actually any major impact on the performance of the product. So now we can basically drop ship our solutions to packing houses, and then our staff can either virtually help them through the protocol, or being on site can just help quickly integrate that in the packing houses and allow the produce to be treated more seamlessly. And it's been great because again, that allows us to be less intrusive, more customer friendly, and most importantly, with the value proposition that is more economic to the suppliers.
Yeah, it seems like this new formulation is giving you a lot more flexibility to be nimble and operate in different environments and cut down on the lead times to get grower or suppliers set up on the platform. Curious, does the new formulation unlock like new product opportunities? When I was there, it was avocados and citrus and apples were kind of the big ones. Does this new formulation allow you to treat in different crop types?
It does. And if you think about we're primarily a citrus and avocado business, but it gives us a chance to expand to vine vegetables, so cucumbers, bell peppers and tomatoes. It gives us a chance to expand into more apples. It gives us a chance to expand in maybe berries. Now we're doing a little bit of melons. So it definitely gives us a chance to expand our offerings in terms of categories, but also in terms of countries now, right? Because you can actually produce this and ship it worldwide versus having to actually move and have equipment be shipped worldwide and be installed. So it's not only easier to expand within more categories, but also it's easier to expand within more producing countries of these categories. And that's given us an opportunity to perhaps accelerate our growth. We're right in the beginning of that, but that's kind of my vision for the business. Is there's an opportunity to kind of scale maybe faster than we were doing before.
And how do you solve the challenge of how this is monetized? Having a better formulation, I think that is a piece of it, right? Because it's cheaper to implement, but you still have to monetize that. So how are you thinking about that, just given the previous business model and approach, and now as you think about it moving forward?
Yeah, and one of the things that I was really interested coming here is the technology has many uses, and I think us understanding first what is the value that it brings to a customer, and that customer being a supplier, a packing house, or that customer being a marketer, or that customer being a retailer. What we actually have to spend a lot more time, and I've been personally spending a lot more time, is for the different types of customers and the different types of categories and the different types of uses of the technology, what value does it bring? And based on that understanding, I think we'll probably find the sweet spot of here's the technology gets better use for this type of category, for this type of customer, for this type of use. So for instance, and I use this analogy quite a bit, if you think about a producer of avocado in Mexico shipping to the United States market, the gift of time is a lot smaller, right? Because they're basically they're shipping within a day or two, and they're going into distribution centers who then storing for a little bit, and they're going into stores. That value that we bring on that extra time that we provide is different than if you're a Peruvian producer shipping it to the United States. That takes a lot longer to get their goods into the specific markets. So we have to be very specific in terms of understanding what value does it bring. So if you're a customer that is more short haul, what is the value? How do we monetize that? By maybe having a different product for the short haul, maybe a different price point for those consumers. If you're more of a long haul and you're storing your fruit, okay, what value does it bring if you have long-term storage? What's the value of gift of time that you get by storing that? Not only you lose less by storing with our Treat It, but you maybe even you can store a little bit more because you now have the gift of time, and maybe you can actually enter new markets or enter in a market that you can actually monetize by charging a little bit more, right? If you're shipping to places where, you're having to overpack because, at the time of arrival, you get deducted if the fruit doesn't have a certain weight. Now, with our technology, perhaps you don't have to overpack as much, which then frees up, some amount of fruit for you to sell to other customers. So we have to be very good, I think, in understanding those uses, understanding who benefits from the gift of time, and then what is the product strategy and the pricing that allows us to capitalize on these opportunities. And initially, I think we went everywhere thinking the technology will have, value everywhere. In reality, it has more value, less value, depending on the category, depending on the country, and depending on the use. And we're being a lot more specific in our approach to be able to actually drive more customized offerings to supply chain, players in the market.
Luiz, earlier you mentioned kind of the original focus on going to retailers and trying to build that pull from the retail side. Like with this new approach, are retailers willing to pay a premium, or like are you able to monetize on the retail side, or is it more supplier focused now?
No, I think there's a need on both, and we're seeing that the steel retailers are heavily involved. We have some retailers here in the United States. We have some retailers in Europe, and I still believe there is value. There's two value. There's a value in reducing waste and shrinkage at the retail stores and even at their distribution centers, for that matter. And I also still think there's a marketing opportunity for retailers to market that fruit a little different. That's probably a little bit of an untapped opportunity right now for retailers that I think in my tenure here, I would like to explore how would we do that with retailers. But I think the value goes beyond retail, right? And I think that's what also this strategy allows us to do with, being more customer friendly and actually having a cheaper cost to move goods around. We can actually bring value to suppliers and potentially marketers as well, importers, because the technology is cheaper now to develop and to commercialize because you don't have all those equipment and personnel needs. So I think the value can be expanded beyond retail and consumers. We're starting to see a lot of value in export markets, the long-term storage, the reduction overpack. We're starting to see many different opportunities. So I do think that also expands the customer reach that we could have. We can actually allow exporters to maybe open up new markets that before was impossible because the fruit wouldn't last that long for you to be able to ship, even a longer haul. So I almost think and I hate the cliche, but the sky is the limit a little bit for us because I think it's opening up with the enhancing formulations. It's opening up new players within the supply chain, potentially new markets for us.
It's interesting. We had a conversation with David Friedberg recently, CEO of Ohalo, and we were talking about just the ag tech industry in general. And he mentioned, there's kind of some negativity around ag tech investment. And he just made the point that a lot of this technology is really good technology that has been iterated over the past several years. And there were some investors early on that didn't see the outcomes that they were expecting. But the technology continues to progress and innovate. And we're seeing it in equipment. We're seeing it in biologicals. We're seeing it in all these different areas. And it sounds like this is the same story here of, right, improved technology will actually allow the business model to make more sense and to work longer term. Is that how you're thinking about it as well?
Yeah, it's almost like, and I've seen this in my history, right? My experience is there are technologies that sometimes come up before their time, and you just got to be patient enough and resilient enough to say eventually you get the value and people will see it. And there are times that the technology is right, but the amount of change that it requires within the industry is such a big change that maybe the adoption is slower than what you want. But one thing I will say is innovation and good science and good products eventually prevail. It's just a matter of, how much patience your investors will have in you, as well as, how much patience and resilience do you and your team have to continue to find ways to, to find the value for specific markets that product fit that ultimately starts to drive adoption. And we're seeing the same thing. There are a lot of things that I think we were a little bit ahead of our time. And now we're starting to see with some of the changes and even some of the products that we have in the pipeline that I would love to share with you guys as well is it's starting to open up. They know our technology creates changes on how you do things in the supply chain, but there are more willingness to now say, let's give it a try. Maybe the time is right. So we're starting to have a lot more productive conversations with suppliers and retailers about different things we can bring to market. But I believe if it's good science, if it's good technology, you just got to be resilient and patient enough to get it to market.
You mentioned kind of the investors, getting them on board with kind of the timeline that it takes to get this technology deployed. Like when you took the CEO role and engaging with the board, like what are the investors' sentiments about kind of the trajectory of the business? Obviously, there's high expectations for the amount of money that's been raised, but how are they feeling about kind of the current status of everything going on?
Yeah, I think what I found is they're very supportive and believers of the technology, and I think that's the most important thing. First is when I came in, I made sure, you guys still believe in the technology? Do you still believe the value? And I think it was sounding, yes, absolutely, this technology has tremendous potential. Now, I think the question is, what's the best way to get this technology to market? And I think that's where I'm working with the team and with the board in defining, right? Initially, we took the technology very broad. We tried many different uses in many categories, many different ways. In doing that, it was great because we learned a lot. And that's how usually startups actually also succeed, is by trying many different things and see what works and what doesn't, and learning from those fast, and then, adopting and adapting. But it was also very costly from a burn, right? And I think now what I'm trying to do is try to find, if I just focus a little bit more, maybe a couple of less, categories in less countries, but we actually find a proven method where it drives a faster adoption and is repeatable and is consistent and reliable. Once I find that model, then I can probably replicate a lot faster in other categories and perhaps in other countries. So I'm at the point where I think, tighten a little bit more, being a little bit more focused on where is the value proposition for what use, for what customer gives us the biggest, return and the fastest return. Try that, accelerate growth there, and then expand. So I got support from the management team and from the board to actually do a little bit of that and maybe scale that way, and then eventually expand faster once you have a proven model that works.
So, Ty, what do you think?
I have a huge takeaway, Tim, from this conversation. A lot of times when you think about a business that has to pivot, they have to evolve, they have to adjust. A lot of times it's focusing on like the business model. And I think that's important to a degree. But what I found kind of fascinating with this conversation is, what about just improving the product, right? Improving the product can be a solution to business model headwinds, right? And it seems like that's a piece of what's happening here, of if you can improve the product so you can avoid some of these other technical and cost challenges associated with it, it helps the business model. So for businesses out there that have a solution, that are trying to figure out, how do we get to profitability? How do we pivot the business model, the economics? Like, maybe just start with, how do you make your product better, right? Like, how can you make it that much better so that the economics actually take care of themselves because you make the core product better?
Great insight, Ty. Loved that one. It was fun to check in on Apeel Sciences. I think it's really cool to check in on these ag tech companies that have been around for quite a while, that have gone through ups and downs and different iterations. And so this is a fun conversation checking in on the latest with Apeel. Hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. We'll be back next week with another new episode.